we need to deepen the concept of justice that we have just touched upon lightly. So the second issue that we want to bring to the panel is this. Much has been said about achieving high economic growth and being a high-income nation. But 2011 is a serious reminder that the world is embroiled in many social struggles. The key question of how politics and economics have come back in such a big way, seeing the Arab Spring, the whole Occupy movements that's going through around the world. Maybe one of my main concerns has been asking the question, how come there's no outrage in Malaysia towards an unequal system that is caused by blatant capitalism? But I've not got very good answers from the people I talk to in Malaysia. Perhaps it's to the credit of our good governance. We managed to protect ourselves from all those financial disasters. But so the question that I have for our panel is this. What does your faith perspective has to contribute to this rising demand for economic justice? We all know that religion can often be passive, where Marx actually says that religion is an opiate of the masses. So my question directed to Fuad, firstly, is what would your response be to your contemporary Marx if he says that your religion is just a form of escapism from the real social and material conditions that are shaping people's lives?
Well, I think you touched on a very important point, and that is the fact that in Malaysia the economic situation is getting worse by the day, and it doesn't look like things are going to get better anytime soon. Right? You can see that politicians are starting to get desperate, they're starting to give handouts, cash handouts, book vouchers and whatnot. All this suggests a kind of a quiet panic for now. For now it's still a quiet panic, right, from the powers that be towards the changes, especially the economic changes that the world as a whole is going through. I have a couple of statistics here that I want to share just to kind of give more context to how severe the situation is. 33.8% of the workforce in Malaysia earns less than an RM700 per month. Right? That's below the poverty line. And the poverty line is something like 760 ringgit per household of 4. Right? So the bar is already low, and 3 out of 10 workers in Malaysia are living below the bar. The bottom 40% of Malaysians live in households earning an average RM1,500 per month. So people are just scraping by. Malaysians in general, and this is the circumstance in which we live every day. Right? So, given this reality, all Muslims are facing, what are Muslim activists in Malaysia doing about this? Well, first of all, we find that they are protesting hantu bonceng. What else are they? They're talking about Elton John concerts. They're still debating what women should wear. What else? They're still debating whether or not thieves should get their hands chopped off, right? So the Muslim imagination is still somewhat stuck with issues that do not really reflect how severe the economic condition is. And this is, I think, a fair point to make that Kiaming just raised. And that is what Marx said, right? Religion is the opiate of the masses. It kind of blinds you from the reality of economic inequalities, right? Religion becomes a projection of your powerlessness. Right? So we go on every day with no real economic power, no real political power, no real control of our lives and worlds, and we concoct, according to Marx at least, we construct this otherworldly realm of heaven, hell, sin, merit, of prophets, of angels, so on and so forth, so that we feel empowered. Right? So we have for Marx at least, and I don't really buy into this, but I'm just explaining, just giving more context to what Kiaming described. For Marx, at least, this other world that comes in the form of religion becomes a source for our powerlessness in the real world, right? So we have no power in this world, so we create religion to feel empowered. Right? In that process, we don't see the real issues, right? So we find that income inequality is less important than hantu bonceng, for example. So that's the kind of opium that we find many Muslims somehow addicted to. Right? Now, I don't buy Marx's story, but I do think that Marx can point us to an important reminder, and that is that a lot of times religious sentiments mask other prior insecurities. Right? And in Malaysia, what you find is that Islam has been politicized in such a way that Muslim identity, Malay identity, and the royal institution are all connected. Right? So the defense of Muslim identity, according to Ibrahim Ali and the likes of Hassan Ali, is the same as defense of Malay privileges. Right? So it's not really about Islam, it's about them being insecure about their status, ethnic status, and using Islam to obscure that insecurity. But then we can take a step further and look at, well, why are they insecure about their ethnic privileges? Well, because for the longest time, Malay nationalism was pitted against the fear, I think irrational fear, of Chinese takeover, which is rooted to economic insecurities as well. So what has happened now is that while we have real economic insecurities, irrational ethnic fears has overtaken our ability to view those economic insecurities objectively. And in that process, Islam becomes politicized. In that process, Islam becomes a tool for the further segregation of Malaysian society. Right? So race sentiments are stoked up. Ethnic segregation is seen as a viable solution when it has failed for many generations. So Islam is caught in that trap of ethnic politics, and in that process, Islam does not address real economic issues. But in reality, if you look at the history of Islam, the liberation of the poor has been an agenda from the very beginning. Usury, which is the excessive charge of interest, was mentioned 5 times, condemned 5 times. And what is not the game of interest if not the cause of the subprime crisis? Right? When you can charge interest liberally and repackage those debts to be sold and resold so that people can speculate on unrealistic economic expectations. In fact, under the Caliph Umar, radiallahu anhu, land was nationalized. Land fell under state control. And Said Qutb quoted a hadith that said that land, water, and fire are to be owned collectively. These are not for private ownership. In fact, private ownership is even a questionable concept in Islam, right? Because everything is actually owned by God. So the idea that private property is an absolute right is something that Muslims have to question as well. So while you have these clear commitments for economic justice in Islam, clear commitments that Islam does not privilege the wealthy, but in fact seeks to address the welfare of the poor, this is all obscured because in Malaysia, Muslims are still trapped in ethnic insecurities. So, does Islam have a positive role to play in addressing some of these problems? Yes, I think Islam can be a good moral compass for us to think of a way outside of the deadlock. But will Muslims take the responsibility of addressing those issues and putting all the other insecurities behind? Well, that's still to be seen. So we have quite a task.
Thank you. Let's have Mr. Lee talk about economic justice.
You know, there are a lot of things come to mind in that sense. Because first, I'll look at the macro level in the sense that we have to understand that our attitudes and assumptions towards social economic development is different. Now that we have to understand that we can't say that it is materialistic driven, because man being man is a social being with a what I call a spiritual being. You can't just address just the material aspect of it. No? no matter how much you have done this, we will find that there will be some poverty at the end of the day, because it's only a few will able to benefit, not the rest. Second, we have a kind of, I would say, rather condescending attitude from the leaders that sense that this is good for you, and that's why you get development. We don't realize that things have changed, that it is the people will dictate what they require, what they need. And you can see that this vision, which has been seen at the United Nations level, how so much of this summit is to bring about that world vision of a world community. Likewise, at the ground level, we have so many civil societies, championing many causes, because this is necessary to bring about a change in society. You talk about environment, you talk about women emancipation. When you talk about economic justice, what about the empowerment of women? We have totally failed to address this very vital issue. Practically half the women rules the world in that sense. And yet, where is the decision making? Where are they involved with economic entrepreneurship? None at all. So there are many of these sessions that have to be taken into account. So when we look at itself, therefore, in this concept of the oneness of humanity, where policies, programs, even our education system will change to address these needs, so that the people will be empowered using religion, which I would not agree with Jeff Ward saying that's opium of the poor by our greater, yes, Marx said that. It is not, it's a question of our understanding. We have to recast our religion in the light of the new age, so that new concepts and new ideas that's consistent from the inspiration of our own religion will bring about a change. So we cannot in any way use the old past religious codes to address the problems of this age. It's impossible. We have moved beyond. We have come together as one global family, and there are many of our culture, the gene pool of our culture, of our religion, will best bring about the level of civilization into a higher level. So in the context of Malaysia itself, then it is a kind of a reflection of humanity, of the various races. The one single people in Malaysia will have to bind them together so that they can bring about a change. And to me, not only the government brings about a change, but the government has to address, engage with the civil society, what are necessary for the benefit of the people. At that point, you notice that, as I mentioned earlier about this materialism, the concept of consumerism is so rampant today that we have lost. What is the value? I'll give you an example, which is true, and I always commented to my friends, those friends who are fasting during month of Ramadan. Where do you go for your fast? You go to the hotels, and you have a widespread of 69 or 70 various kinds of dishes for you, and you eat your heart's content. Is this the spirit of fasting? So we have lost the spirit of fasting. Instead, we are indulging on the pleasures of our life, that is our appetite, to whet our appetite. What happened to it? So we have to understand that there must be a balance between materialism as well as religion, without which society will not function. Science is a branch of knowledge. Religion is another branch of knowledge. And when these two are best used, humanity will have a perfect civilization. So is Malaysian in the Malaysian context.